Hey guys, I want to talk to you guys about contentment and about sovereignty today. And we're going to look at 1 Timothy chapter 6. The first couple verses here really start off talking about basically our witness and our testimony. And he starts off saying, let as many bondservants as are under the yoke, talking about that they're slaves under masters, as are under the yoke, count their masters worthy of all honor, so that the name of God and his doctrine may not be blasphemed. And the idea here is that in this particular time frame we're talking about slavery, and that if you were a slave and you were under an unruly master, somebody who was not particularly good to you or anything like that, that we're still to count them worthy of all honor, because God in his sovereignty has placed us in that situation. And he says the reason for this is so that the name of God and his doctrine may not be blasphemed. And this kind of comes down to a book that I just recently kind of completed reading. It's called Purpose-Driven Life. And I'll tell you, I shied away from this book for so long because basically I was kind of the impression that any book that hit the #1 bestseller list and stuff probably was not based on good doctrine and theology and stuff, and I've shied away from even talking about it on this channel because of that reason. But I've recently just completed the entire book and gone through everything, and I can tell you the book is straight up legit. It's squared away. I have no doctrinal issues with this book at all. Even though he kind of comes a little bit more from an Arminian standpoint, and I probably lean a little bit more Calvinistically, there's nothing in there that I found to be doctrinally unsound. But back to this passage, one of the things that it talks about in that book is it talks about that it's not about us, it's all about God. And in this particular passage he's talking about how if we're a servant under an unruly master, that our testimony and our conduct becomes our testimony, and that we're to treat that master with honor, so that God's name is not blasphemed, so that people don't associate our unruly, rebellious behavior with God and then pull back from God. He goes on to say, and those who have believing masters, let them not despise them, because they are brethren. And the idea is if you're a slave under an unbelieving master, then you're there for a reason. God has placed you there to be a witness, to be a mission to that individual. But if you're there under a believing master, if you're a slave under a believing master, the same thing applies. Why would you not serve this master? Because he's a brother, he's a believer. Why would you not serve him out of love? And the passage goes on, the chapter goes on to talk about kind of the reasons why we don't do this, the reasons why we pull away from that submissive type attitude, and realizing that in being a good servant, so to speak, which many of us shy away from, the reason why we shy away from that is because of pride. In verse 4 he says, he is proud, knowing nothing, and he is obsessed with disputes and arguments over words which come envy, strife, reviling, suspicions, so on and so forth. But he says in verse 5, he says, who suppose godliness is a means of gain, from such withdraw yourself. And the idea is that there are some who view Christianity as a means of gain, and not necessarily just financial gain. They look at it as a means to make my life better. All you have to do is read the book of Acts, and you can see that things did not get better for believers when they came to Christ, not from a worldly perspective. And the idea is once again coming back to that foundational principle that it's not about us, it's all about God. When we serve God, we're doing this understanding that in doing so we're denying ourselves. We're denying the things in life that maybe we want from a fleshly, worldly perspective, in pursuit of something better, in pursuit of Him. And that's the idea that we have here, is that kind of rebellious attitude, that not accepting the fact that maybe God has placed you in this situation to be a testimony, to be a witness to others. Maybe God has placed you there for a reason. It really is kind of a rebelliousness, not against our master, but it's a rebelliousness against God, because we're basically saying that God is telling us that, hey, this is where I want you, kid, and we're basically looking back at him and saying, I don't want to be here. I shouldn't have to be here. I shouldn't have to be under this unruly master. I shouldn't have to be under this other believer. We're the same level. I shouldn't have to be there. And it's that kind of rebellious attitude that that really is rooted in pride and is rooted in discontentment. So we really need to kind of seek out and find our contentment in God. We need to, when we have that spirit of pride that kind of wells up inside us and begins to take us over, we need to stop and take a look back and ask ourselves, what is it that is making me kind of defy authority? If God is sovereign and God has created all things and God has put me here for this time and this purpose, for this reason, then really what right do I have to say to God, I shouldn't have to be here, or I shouldn't have to be enduring this? So I wanted to share that with you guys. Go ahead and read the rest of the chapter. We may talk about it some more throughout the rest of the week, but you guys, God bless.